everybody. This is Bill. Not a native of West Brookfield, but I have been here for 75 years. 11 years I was away and came back intentionally because I grew up here and liked West Brookfield. It's been my interest to do history in West Brookfield, so it's not a big chore. It's kind of interesting for me, and I enjoy doing it. And so with that, I will get started. Now, one thing, we didn't ask anybody to bring anything, but I'm sure you all have it, and I want to make sure that you're going to use it today. The first thing is your imagination. I want you to use your imagination when I'm talking about something. Close your eyes and see if you can picture it. Imagine what I'm talking about. The other thing is curiosity. Are you as curious about these funny things or actual things as I am? So I hope you all brought your curiosity with you and your memory. There's not going to be a test, but I want you to remember your way home through all this rain. And if we have another program, come down and see the next one. So I trust someone doesn't have those three things, they can raise their hand. Okay, we'll get started. And we'll start off I'm going to compliment the lady that's running the projector there. She did this PowerPoint presentation. I handed her a stack of photographs and printed stuff, and I said, we want a program, here's what it should do. And she did a fabulous job. She's absolutely great. Heather Walker. Now, originally, they told me that they would like the history of the Common. So, history of the Common, okay, Bill. Go back to before there was a Common, what was it? So I went back to 1691. And I got a deed or a transfer of property that was awarded to Luke Hitchcock. And it started at a curve in Coy Brook. See the curve at Coy Brook up there? That's where his property started. And it was by a black oak tree with a pile of stones at the curve. And we have that in a printed, handwritten deed. But I went and searched all over and could not find that black oak tree or the pile of stones. But we did map out, with Dan Hamilton's assistance, what Luke Hitchcock was awarded. Now we can look at that. Luke Hitchcock was given 3 grants. When they gave you a grant, they didn't give you a couple acres. They gave you 2 of 80 acres and the other remaining to come up to 220 acres. Luke Hitchcock was born in 1655, and the deed with one of the grants was 1691, and he died in 1723. When he died, and Hitchcock, you see, is so important here because there's all kinds of Hitchcocks running around, but now I don't know of a Hitchcock that lives in West Brookfield. And there were so many of them, and they did so much important stuff, I don't know what happened to them all. But Luke gave it all to his son Pelatiah. Pelatiah, born in 1698, died in 1776. That's kind of an important date there, for which we'll get into something later. Pelatiah had 2 sons, actually had a very large family, 2 sons that he divided his property up between Moses Hitchcock, 1743, 1779, and David Hitchcock, 1741 to 1814. David Hitchcock is allegedly the one who built the tavern in 1760. He built the tavern in 1760. He was born in 1741. He built the tavern at 19 years old? Maybe. maybe not. He didn't own the land. Oh, he built a tavern on someone else's land at 19 years old? I don't know. Maybe he did. But guess what? He inherited it anyway in 1776 when Pelletier died. David Hitchcock got it. Now, by then, he's 25 years old, and now he owns the land. And it seems possible that, oh, I got this big chunk of land, and it's nothing on it for 400 yards. There's not another house or dwelling or anything else. I think but it's all nice flat lands in the plains, I think I'll build a tavern there. So that makes sense to me. And, you know, over the years, the tavern was built in the 1760s, not 1760, 1760s. And that would put it all in line with 25 years old, and then owning the property. Now, please don't go up and tell the poor family that's running the tavern now that Bill Jankins said it wasn't built in 1760. I do not know that it was or wasn't, but you can see my line of reasoning, everybody? So anyway, Moses Hitchcock had 9 children. That's a lot of Hitchcocks. David, his brother, had 8 children. So and from 1800 on, there's a bunch of Hitchcocks around, but what happened to them all? Now, Warren had a Hitchcock tavern. Brimfield had a Hitchcock tavern. I do not know whether they had any connection. I did not do any genealogy to find out on that. Can everybody hear me fine? Okay, I didn't want to do that. So David Hitchcock now owns, let's show that for a minute. Here's Luke's, all the land that Luke had, and this is the common right here. But there's no school street because there was no school, of course, then, so there's no school street. What is now, we know the common, starts down at the point in front of the tavern that David Hitchcock built sometime. And this is kind of Maple Street. It goes all the way down to Maple Street and over to where Martha Salem Liaska lives now. That was an open piece of land. So now can we go back up one again? Oh, well, we'll go with this then. This is the section that David inherited, and his brother Moses inherited this. This goes from a little bit west of Central Street down to what we know as a Citgo station, Country Corner Citgo, down to the river, across to another Coy Brook and up. And you can see the 2 pieces of land divided right there, David, Moses. Now, David Hitchcock, can you close your eyes for a minute and imagine from Coy Brook on Route 9 all the way to the Citgo station with probably 4 homes on it? That's it. It was just open, barren land. And that's what they inherited, but they were wise men. David Hitchcock was very wise. From the time he inherited it in 1776 to 1812, he sold 23 parcels of this land here. So he was dividing it up and selling parcels, 8 acres, 12 acres, and everything, to different people. Bill doesn't know enough to stop there. I found out, here's the 23 parcels of land and who he sold it to. So what does he do? He sits down for a day and he prints out every damn deed of all the 23 parcels of land that David Hitchcock sold. What he sold, he did not sell that area. And so he had a tavern built there and kept this open. Well, there was a guy named Isaac Nichols, and David Hitchcock and Isaac Nichols were active in the church together. And Isaac was a builder. And so he said, sell me some of that land. Here's Isaac Nichols. That big open area that we now know as the Common. He said, sell me the east part of it. So David said, okay, you can buy it. And he bought it. And he built, Isaac Nichols, built 2 homes right in that area that I'm showing you now. One was the home is now owned by Heather Walker, but people probably here would remember it as Gary Miller's house. And the other one was right beside it, but connected with a stable to Miller's house, is the house that Martha Salem Liaska now lives in. But it was right adjacent to Heather's property. They, between 1880 and 1890, they moved Heather's house, not Heather's house, Martha Salem's house up to where it now is on the corner of Winter Street and Route 67. So they were adjacent, and then they moved that house, and the Converse family built the home that now sits there. So that's a little bit of the detail that goes into that. Where do we want to go? So Isaac Nichols built those 2 pieces of property, and then unfortunately, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Isaac Nichols was the one who wrote the check for the bell that was in the Congregational Church that was built by Paul Revere. Isaac Nichols was the finance person at the church then, and he sent the money in to pay for the bell that was in the church that Paul Revere built. Enough version here. He died, and of course we all know Dwight Foster. He was Jedediah's son, and he had a brother too. And the 2, Dwight and his brother, were both United States senators in the same time, serving the Senate at the same time. And that never happened again till the Kennedy brothers, where 2 brothers served in the Senate at the same time. So you people from West Brookfield can be proud you had 2 senators from West Brookfield serving in the Senate at the same time. The Foster brothers. So Dwight now is dealing with Isaac Nichols' son James in processing his will. And they sold the homes, but the property remained unsold. So Dwight Foster bought it. So that's how come some of the prop common owns on the eastern part was owned by Dwight Foster. Hitchcock's getting along in age, good friends with Foster. What are we going? We're not going to build any more houses. This is a nice area. Let's leave it open. So we're going to give it to somebody. Who are we going to give it to? Now this is a copy of the deed, handwritten. What's it say? To the inhabitants of the first parish in the town of Brookfield. Inhabitants, are they members of the Congregational Church or what? They live in a geographic area called a parish, so they are the citizens, not necessarily the church. It says right on the deed it was given to the inhabitants. Now don't tell them tomorrow, say, Bill says the church doesn't own the common and the town owns the common, and that's been argued about since this happened. Recently, an attorney said the town owns it, But I'm going to let you folks, what do you think? Town or church? Well, we'll get on to that again. And then he tells, which I purchased from Isaac Nichols, the executor of the last will of James Nichols, that was Isaac's son. So that's a little controversy there about who really owns it. But we can go back now and show the next slide. We'll see. History of the meeting house. The meeting house being the parish, the church, or whatever. Meeting houses served two purposes. They were where you held your religious ceremonies, and they were also your town hall, where everything got. They were built with public funds, and in West Brookfield for congregational worship. They also served as a town hall, and the congregational ministers were paid by the town with their taxes, as all town officials were. So you can see the church and the state were hand in hand then, in that point. Public support of religion was not a big deal. It wasn't questioned. The only conflict was, how come we got the congregational when not everyone wants the congregational denomination to have it? So that was a law up until 1811. The state passed that they could withdraw the tax support from the congregational church. So now we got starting a little bit of separation of church and state in 1811. After the Revolution, the answer to these complaints of domination support the congregational church, a series of laws was passed to gradually remove the support of religion from government. This is the real division of church and state. No longer did your taxes support the minister, whether he's Episcopalian or congregational or whatever. Now your taxes did not support him anymore. This is, we've all remembered and taught in school that the church and state were separate. This is when it occurred in West Brookfield and why it occurred. And then a group of 5 or men could unite as a religious society, and the tax money they had formerly paid to support the congregational church could be used to support another church. So 5 people could start another denomination of there. And the religious society wasn't taking the place of the supporting of religion again. Go. So we were talking about the common. This is we decided this was, I think, about an 1887 photo of the common with a fence around it. Of course, again, now we got to remember when we closed our eyes and looked at that spot, there were no automobiles, there was no electricity, there was no public water, there was no roads. Everybody had a horse and the carriages and everything else. And this is 1884. No, I think we decided it's a little later than that, 1886 or 7. Now, how come Heather and I decided that? Well, in 1881, Stickney had a fund he started and built this fence all the way around the common. And he also paid to have this sidewalk built all the way around the common. But at the time, 1885, we had a man that was very generous, and he gave the fountain on the common. And this photo, if you blow it up enough, does show the fountain. There's the elementary school on School Street. That's really a neat photo, and it tells a lot about Stickney's fund on the common. This is a terrible picture, but let me tell you what it is. It's the 1910 celebration for the 250th anniversary of the Quabog Plantation. And this is the common, And this was a huge celebration. Look at the size of the tents on the common. This would be Route 9 here, and that wagon is heading east on Route 9. He's going to go to Boston, I guess. But there's a bicycle there. There's a good shot of that over in the museum. I don't know if people had a chance to see that today. That's a nice shot of the common there, one of the things. But the common has had a lot of uses over the years. One of the things you'll read that the commons were used to train the militia. And the militia was very necessary because we hadn't had a civil war yet. But that was, everybody kind of knew what was going to be happening. There was going to be sometime kind of an issue between the North and the South and slavery and so forth. But our militia here in 1855 was training at the Baldwin place in West Brookfield. Now, a few of you history buffs know about the Baldwin Castle. Baldwin Castle was down where we now know Charmill Drive area on West Main Street on the right-hand side. Baldwin had what he called a castle. It was 5 homes and a big piece of property. And the 5 homes are now still existing in West Brookfield, and 4 of them are right here on Central Street and High Street. But anyway, they weren't training on the common. Our militia didn't train on the common. Baldwin had a place, and he was active in the militia, and so they trained, and this was a call to Henry Whipple to show up at the training on 1855 on the, 12th day of September? So he went to training down at Luke Baldwin's castle. Another nice shot here of some of Stickney's work. Meeting houses, as they were called, started on Foster Hill with the original settlement. This is the 4th one here, the 4th meeting house, and was built in 1794, but it wasn't built the way you look at it here. This is the front. Can everybody orient themselves? This is Route 9 here, looking straight across the common at the Congregational Church that you see now. This is the church that was there previous to that. But formerly it wasn't this size, and the front of it faced the now doctor's offices on the other end of the common. So it was facing that way, and it was not nearly as large. It was the part that I'm talking about was built in 1794. And then 1838, now we got this building. It was remodeled, turned around, so it's now facing the common rather than facing up towards North Brookfield. Each side formerly was a porch. It was just covered over. So they added that to be enclosed, and it was extended to 80 feet by 52 feet. The other church, before they changed it, did not have a steeple and clock and bell. It had a cupola on the church when it was much smaller before they turned it around. Then they added a 6-foot projection here, and you can't see them really, but there's 4 nice columns that go from top to bottom here, first to second floor. And that all happened. And then this building was stood as it is here from 1838 to February 28th, 1881. February. It got struck by lightning in February and burned completely, total loss. You can understand they didn't have the fire equipment and everything today, and so they lost it all. including the Paul Revere bell that was up here. There was the bell that was built by Paul Revere, that the church paid $198.23. And Isaac Nichols, that I talked about before, was the guy that built it. Money is the root of all evil, right? A guy gave him $200 to pay for the bell. It only came to $198, and then when they got there, Paul Revere, or someone in his office or whatever, says, oh, it's only $186. Well, they went in to pay $198, and then they came back with change from $186. Now, what are we going to do with the 14 bucks, right? And that was a big, major concern in the Catholic Church. What the hell are we going to do with that 14 bucks? We're going to give it back to the guy that gave the 200, or we can use it and everything else. But you can see that money always had some issue playing everywhere. The church burned 1881, and this is the church that replaced it in 1883. Same location, Congregational Church at the end of the common, but it's not the one you recognize today. This one lasted pretty well. It was not well liked by the members of the church. They just didn't like the design of it. In August of 1938, we had quite a hurricane, and that steeple up there fell and stuck right in the roof here. And probably the historians have seen pictures of it. It looks like an ice cream cone sticking through the roof of the church. But the church had the windows were all blown out, and it had such severe damage that it had to be redone completely. And what redo comes to the church that you now look at up there. Some of the parts were saved and everything, but this was a church that went from 1883 till 1938. The fountain. Okay, here's 1938. I was telling you it blew the steeple in. This is the poor girl who is now, 15 and 38, 63 years old, 53 years old. She's falling to her death. That's the girl on top of the fountain. And she fell and into so many pieces that they could not reconstruct it. So we went without a girl up there from 1938 to 1985. You can see all the destruction of that, the trees and everything on the common from the hurricane in 38. That's my wife, Louise. Irving, England, Audio D. Beccaro, Eddie Tokorian, and a man named Baker from Gilbertville. 1985, look, there's a new girl up there. My wife was chairman of the Common Committee for years, and every year she'd write a grant to the State Historical Society to try and get money to replace the girl. And each year they wrote her back and said, oh, you did a nice presentation, but we're all out of money. We spent it up in Barrie where the senator lives. No, forget that. That's Bill's sick humor anyway. But anyway, we never got a grant for it. And the committee decided, well, why don't we go see Irving, England, and see if he will support building a new girl for the top. So being chairman of the committee, they sent Louise down, and she made the proposal to Irving that the committee would like to have him underwrite the cost of it to replace the girl that had been gone since 1938, and it's now 1985 when she went up. And Irving said, looked at it, Louise, and he says, no, I will not do that. And my wife was shocked. And he says, I do not deal with committees. He says, you get involved in a committee, and this one wants it painted green, and this one wants this, and this one wants that. He says, I will not do it with a committee. But all is not lost. He looked at Louise and he said, you go back to the committee and tell them that I will do everything. I will have it replumbed, we'll get a new girl and everything. But there's only 2 people who are going to make a decision about anything on that common. And he says, Mrs. Jenkins, you're one, and I'm the other. No committees. So that's how Irving decided that he would do it. And he spent a lot of money. But how do you replace a girl up there? How do you design it? So I happen to have a 1923 photo of the girl. It was a pretty good photo. And Audio Di Beccaro here is a sculptor from Boston. And he said, I can do it from that. And he made an almost perfect replica of the original girl that's up there. But she was made out of fiberglass. But Irving paid to have the whole fountain, new lights put in, new plumbing, and the plumbing goes all the way up, so she pours water out of that bucket, and then the lion's head come down and so forth. Irving underwrote the whole thing, and at no charge to the town of West Brookfield. Oh my God. You didn't know you were going to see pornography here, did you? Herman Walker was not related. Was a funeral director, and he had the funeral parlor where Varnum's funeral parlor is now. But he was active in town affairs, and he was chairman of the Common Committee. And the fountain needed to be repainted. And, well, we're not going to go to a contractor. We'll go down to the highway department and see if a couple of guys down there want to do some part-time work. So 2 fellows, and I knew of them both, and one of them just recently passed, were hired to paint the common. And, the fountain. Now, they did not know that when they took the job that he wanted them flesh-colored and with red gowns and red hair. But they did what they were told, and they painted the girls this color. Now, I lived in West Brookfield in '72, and I do remember it, but I thought it only lasted because there was such a controversy. Everybody, look at those girls. That's immoral. We can't have that on our beautiful common in West Brookfield. And so I thought they only lasted 2 weeks. And I was telling, and then the town people got together, paint them all green like they should be. So, but they did, this was their way. And I said for 2 weeks for a long time. And recently I was giving a photo. People like to give Bill's photos because I keep them all in file, and I'm glad to show them there. This same scene here, only the trees are all yellow and brown. It's in the fall. You see here, they're all green. So it evidently lasted longer than 2 weeks, whether it was a month or whatever, but longer than 2 weeks because the trees were all in the other photo I was given a different color. And then one of the fellows that painted it enhanced these girls a little bit that really shouldn't have been done, but anyway, it was. Okay, School Street School. I purchased the original logbook that was kept on the School Street School from the first meeting of when they decided to build the school to 15 years. The entire log is in this book that I have, all handwritten by the secretary. And right after 1861, guess what? A week later, Civil War was declared, right? We're going to build a school, and Civil War starts I think in April in 1861. But I'm going to move off that for just a minute. That was District 1. The school on School Street School was District 1, downtown West Brookfield. And you had district schools. District 2 was at the bottom of Ragged Hill. District 3 was opposite, a little bit down from Salem Cross. District 4 was the top of Ragged Hill at that other street that comes up that I can never remember the name of. What is it? Pierce Road. That's District 4 school up there. This is District 1. Guess what? Only the people who lived in District 1 could vote on it to build a school. If you lived up in Wickabock Valley, you had no chance of voting on this school, whether you wanted it or not, because the people in District 1 voted on District 1 school, and only the people there. That was amazing to me. But right after they took the vote, they're going to have a locating committee. Where are you going to put the school? Because remember, that's the open common. There's only 2 houses on it. And it was given to the inhabitants of the first parish. So, but they examined several places, and the committee was unanimous in commenting the district known as Fisk Park. Now, I told you that John Fisk owned the property that Heather Walker has now. And there was no school there or anything, and he used that as his own park. Nobody really cared. He kept it up nice and everything. So it was called, that Fisk Park is where they decided to build the school. And we'll show you a photo of the school later. But why did they do it? Because it was near the center of the district. It's well surrounded with trees, easy access to all parts, and it was convenient to obtain water. 1861, there was no public water in West Brookfield, but there were water wells up on Foster Hill that had run private water company down and ran water pipes down. So the home that I now live in had water from Foster Hill, and it went down from house to house, not out in the street. The pipe went down, and I have a lead pipe in the basement that filled a cistern. But anyway, it was convenient to water, and it would need no fencing because it's well off the street, and there was no automobiles in 1861, and the common what that area now could be used as a playground, and it wouldn't cost any expense to the district. It'd be out of the dust area for much traveled road, what was traveling down. There weren't any automobiles, a few horse and wagons and so forth, that's all. Therefore, they desired it, presented this as a location committee. The meeting adjourned, they accepted it, and that became the location of the school. And here is the picture of the school. That's a nice building, isn't it? I attended from the 4th grade to the 8th grade in this school. This is the entrance on the north side of the school, and there's an identical entrance over here on the south side. Lord forbid a boy try to go in that door. That was girls only. The girls went in one door, and the boys went in the other. And I don't think they would punish the girl mad if she went in the boys' room, but don't the boys go in the girls' door. That was a no-no. Stickney's fence, which we'll get onto again, but you can see the fence that was around the common. Okay, we'll go to other local houses. This is a home that you guys, everybody probably in this room, has been by 150 times on Main Street in West Brookfield, and you probably don't recognize it. Anybody? I'll tell you, it's now the Brookhaven Rest Home. And this is a little different angle. This is the front that would be facing West Main Street, and this is looking west. And I believe one of these gals here is Doc Bill's wife, because Dr. Bill, many people hear about Dr. Bill. He had a fishing pond up off of Wickabog Valley Road, and he was a well-known, the only dentist in town, and practiced dentistry. And they often said, if you go up to see him and he's not there, you'll see a sign, "Gone fishing, see you later." And Doc Bill was quite a sportsman and everything. But this was his home. A beautiful home, huh? And look at that carriage shed. That's a gorgeous, that has now been converted to rooms for the Brookhaven Rest Home. Cottage Street. Cottage Street, all these buildings, these homes here, were built, I think maybe one or two were built during the Civil War, but the rest of them right afterwards. So probably by 1875, all of these homes on Cottage Street were built. Of course, there was no electricity, no running water, and so there's no utility poles. And this is where David Callahan's house is now, up here. And everybody that's my age recalls this was called the Pines, because they're going up to the Pines to do something. And there's now a road up there, and this is all covered with homes and cottages. These were all spec homes. They weren't built custom homes. They're all cookie-cutter homes. Every one of them looks alike. Go down the street, and they still are like that. But there was speculation by the West Brookfield Builders Association. And this photo was taken from the belfry of the town hall. That's part of the town hall roof right here. And but I thought it was a very interesting shot. This would be Lake Wickabog up here, and this is Lake Wickabog coming down here, because what you now know as a town beach had not yet been built. That peninsula that goes out, divides between the swamp and the lake, was not there. So the lake came down and went right down to the end of, in front of Callahan's property now, and that was all lake property. Indian Cemetery that we know, right over there. 1885. Okay, early town services. I said 1913, West Brookfield voted to have municipal water put in. So up until that point, there was no municipal water. If you wanted it, there were two companies that were selling water, and one company had been sold twice. The Cement Aqueduct Company, West Brookfield Cement. This is a share of stock. I can't read that up there. But Philander Homes is a very well-known name around. This sold for $100. So if you wanted water, it came from Long Hill, behind the home that the Benoits now live, and they've probably seen many of the wells up there. Yes? And it came down, it was piped down across the Quabog River and up Milk Street and then down, and they sold water on Central Street too. But that was all a private water company. The assessors charged you $100 each year for personal property tax if you owned a share of the Cement Aqueduct Company. But this took the place of municipal water and everybody having a dig and support a well in their own yard. Now, before the Cement Water Company, or whatever that one was called, there was the West Brookfield West Parish Aqueduct Company. Same area, came from the same area, but it was changed hands. And this is 1846. a bill to, Joseph Blair. Where did Joseph Blair live? People going down West Main Street, the family that lives there now, last year started to have it painted. Bernie Bouvier painted it, and it's now a beautiful paint job. It was just finished. That was called the Blair House. So this was a bill that he was paid in 1846. He paid $3 for 6 months worth of water. Now, it wasn't running water in your house. You had a cistern in the basement, a waterproof cement tub down there. And usually it was, if they could, they'd put it under the kitchen. So your pump in the kitchen, your hand pump, was right over the cistern, and you could pump water from the cistern up into the kitchen sink. See, your imagination going? Can you imagine doing that? And guess what? There was no bathroom facilities either. So you couldn't flush the toilet in the bathroom because you had to go outside and use a private building or in the barn or where another bathroom was built. I just put this in for fun. This is a 1910 regulations from the Board of Health. And I spoke to them and they said, yes, we'd like to have you remind everybody that they have to do this now. And no privy or water cesspool shall be watertight and maintained within 2 rods of the well. That was your septic system. All privy vaults and cesspools must be emptied before the first day of June and again the first day of November. During the summer, they shall be disinfected and emptied as often as necessary to keep them free from offensive odors. Those were the good old times? I'm not too sure that was good old times. No person shall throw or deposit in any street, sidewalk, court, or stream, square, public place, any dead animal, decaying vegetables, offal, garbage, manure, or the contents of any privy. So you couldn't empty your privy and throw it out in the street. Just something was to remind people that say those were the good old days. Early town businesses. All streets were named for a reason. Cutler Hill, Cutlers live up there. Maple Street was just loaded with maple trees. And everyone wonder, why the hell we got Milk Street? In the center of town, there's no farmers, there's no anything else. Well, we had a huge, beautiful, condensed milk factory. And it was on the other side of the Quabog River, and it fronted right on the river. The milk factory made condensed milk. And that's the river up there. Condensed milk in West Brookfield. This guy knew what he was doing. A lot of dairy farms in West Brookfield. You had a railroad that was built in 1838, and you had a port in Boston that had steamships going away all the time. There was no refrigeration on these ships. They had to use condensed milk. Because of lack of refrigeration, you couldn't carry fresh milk on it. So he had ample supply of milk from all the dairy farms, and they would come down from all places down Milk Street, which ran to the factory. Then Milk Street now ends at Front Street, but it used to go all the way down to the bottom, and then Long Hill started there. But now they've changed Milk Street. But that's why Milk Street was called what it is, because of this milk factory there. That's a beautiful building. Look at the cupola. And that stack is huge. And look at the pediments over all the windows. That was a gorgeous factory. I think that's George Holcomb with a load of hay from the horse there. And Holcomb's own property down there. But that is one of the industries in West Brookfield. and a well thought out one. He had the supply, he had the shipping, he had the market, he had everything. It all made sense. Doesn't it make sense to you guys? No? He was ahead of his time. He was a good thinker. And unfortunately, some wise guy came along and invented refrigeration. And the market for condensed milk went downhill. And they did cheese and jams, but was not successful. And the building was this beautiful building, and the stack was taken down around, I think, by fire, and then the rest of it destroyed in about 1910. This is a map of fire insurance company had these maps in every town. And what they were is their fire insurance was rated by these maps. Tell a lot. That's a one-story building. This is 2 stories. This tells what they did in the building. And they had no watchmen, no fire apparatus, steam heat. They heated with coal and kerosene lights. And that's what they would, this is an ice house. This is the Quabog River here. The bridge over from Long Hill and Milk Street was right about in this area. But there was one of these maps for all the industry and commercial buildings in any town. They're called Sanborn maps. And each year they would go to one of the insurance companies, Marge, and say, go visit that and see if there's been any changes from year to year. I just thought it might be interesting to see how things work then too. Now, before we get on with this one, this was a fly rod, Standard Fishing Rod Company. It was located right across the street where the parking lot is now for Gavitt Wire. About 35 years ago, someone told me that they made split bamboo fly rods in West Brookfield. Oh, really? So I, have my second thing, curiosity, so digging out, and I found information about the fly rod company. So the next thing, if you're Bill, you say, God, they made fly rods, you ought to find one, right? So for 35 years, I've been looking to buy a fly rod made at the Standard. 2 days ago, a man calls me and he says, Bill, I know you've been looking for one of these for years. I've got one. Do you want to buy it? So I purchased it sight unseen, a fly rod that was made here. Now, that's a big building. As you can see, it's 4.5 stories tall, and that home is still there behind. The Bliss home, that's still there. And this is another building that went there. Well, Grover Cleveland endorsed the Standard Fishing Rod Company. They turned out a high-grade quality split bamboo fly rod. Well, that is true. They had a rod maker there that was making 2 exceptionally good rods, and they sold for $4.95 in 1904. Decent chunk of money in 1904. The rest of the rods that were made there were sold by the dozen. Split bamboo rods sold by the dozen to other merchandisers like Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, and so forth. They were unlabeled and everything else. The 2 rods that were made that were fancy rods by the guy, one is called a Cleveland rod, and the other is a Reliant rod. And the rod, and this gentleman right here, I shouldn't tell him that, I'm unhappy with what he did. He bought one of the rods I was trying to get. And they're beautiful rods, aren't they? Someday, if you get a chance and you want to see it when I get it, I'll show you my Reliant rod that I now have after 35 years of searching. And then, okay, Sanborn, this was an industry. He wanted to buy fire insurance, so Sanborn has a map, 1904, of the Standard Rod Company. Now you can see, this is the dwelling that we saw behind. It's got a D, that's the dwelling. That's the Bliss House. That's a barn that was there. They occupied two houses. This is the one you see in the photo, the 4.5-story wood frame building, and this is another one. Now this building up here did storage and sewing. Does that say sewing? Yeah, of the bamboo up there. And here we had the sealing machine and cleaning and shipping and everything. And they had a coal furnace. Let's see, no watchman. American thermostat fire alarm system. They had a fire alarm system. Power and heat was steam, coal fired. It did have electric lights in 1904 that they generated themselves. Lights, electric. They had a Grinnell sprinkler system supplied with a water tank on top of the roof here, and a Knowles pumper. Knowles was a predecessor of Warren Steam Pump. Knowles made pumps in Warren. So this building had a Knowles pumper in it. Every building in town that had fire insurance, if it was a commercial building at all, it was on a Sanborn map. And I have a notebook full of them. Go ahead. Okay, this is a little known place in West Brookfield. No one's ever heard of it before. But they called it Howard's Drive-In. And I think it's still there. This is 1932. This would be Route 9 going down. And this is Howard's Drive-In, right where it's located now. They had 3 gas pumps there, sold sandwiches and coffee, the Highland Coffee House. And I believe it says 1932 on the photo. I got it here, but 1932, that looks like the right year for the truck. And Route 9, that would be Webb's farm, Townsend's farm, at the bottom of the hill where it's now Pierre Marini's pool facility. At one point I counted there were 8 places you could buy fuel for your automobile in West Brookfield. Right across from Howard's, there was another place where now Potvin lives. And they both sold the same brand of fuel across the street from each other. But they did anyway. This is what is now Bill King's. Jason Parquette has the mini mall there, opposite the Chinese restaurant there. And they, guess what? Sold fuel. And I remember this is Charlie Anderson's building, and he had a little thing. And he also had overnight cabins you could sell. And I think King still has one over on this side of the house at King's real estate office up there. You looked, there's a building there was being an overnight cabin at the time. Town has changed a little bit, but some things are still there. That home is still there just much as it is now. This one attracted my eye because it's very early, and he was a jeweler in West Brookfield. How could West Brookfield support a jeweler? But look at it. He's got a 5-color trade card that he produces. That's in a Bailey jeweler, West Brookfield. That is a beautiful business card. So I had to do it because people were promoting their business any way they could, and that's not an inexpensive card to get a 5-color card printed in those times. And that's very well. The definition is excellent. Don't you all think that is? Let's go. Okay, we're talking about taverns. Did you know that each town had to have a tavern? As well as a meeting house, it was necessary to have a tavern. And the tavern didn't only put up lodging, they sold liquor. Samuel Owen from Springfield settled in West Brookfield, 1688. And he got grants for 227 acres east of Warding Rock. Well, of course, I know everybody knows where Warding Rock is. And, but if you don't, I'll give you a little cue. If you went up Wigwam Road, at the very bottom, what was the tavern was Lindsay Smith's home. That's in that little fork there between Wigwam Road and North Brookfield. He had a greenhouse below, and that was Owen's Tavern. And the Warding Rock is on the left side of Wigwam Road over. And I don't know how it got that name, but from that rock, when there was no homes or anything else, it's elevated up. You can see the whole common and downtown. That's a hell of a place to build a tavern there. Why would you build a tavern there? In 1692, why would you build a tavern way up there when all the town is there? Well, there is a Fort Gilbert that was manned 24 hours a day in front of the elementary school in West Brookfield. There's a big granite marker there that says Fort Gilbert. Well, Fort Gilbert had a lot of men in there guarding the town all the time. What did the men do at night? They went up to the tavern, and he had a liquor license and he could sell liquor. And the tavern was still open until 1717. These guys weren't dumb. He came from Springfield. He was awarded a bunch of land in West Brookfield. What the hell am I going to do with it? I can turn that into money. There's all these men down there looking for entertainment every night and everything else, so I'll build a tavern up there. He did, same as David Hitchcock did years later down in the thing. Camp Wickabog for boys. Well, we all know where Lake Wickabog is. Camp Wickabog, the man purchased the land in 1916, about 300 acres. He was going to start a Camp Wickabog for boys. It's up Wickabog Valley Road. There's a home up there now that's a log, I think it's a log home up there now, it's been built. This is before McGreevy. This guy, Dr. Gilbert, director of Agricultural Society in Massachusetts, and he thought that all children should be exposed to agriculture and farm life. And so he bought this big piece of land and got a bunch of his buddies to help him underwrite it. And the advisory board there, one of them is a professor at Harvard University. There's another one from MIT. All of these guys are very important. Dr. Dean at Tufts College, medical school. They were all on the board of this little Camp Wickabog for boys. In 1927, you could send your boy to Camp Wickabog for $300. $279 would buy a Model T Ford. Or you could buy an automobile or send your boy away for 4 weeks for $300. So guess where he got a ticket from? New York City and Boston. And these are kids that had never been exposed. They thought milk came in a glass bottle and was delivered. And they were going to be exposed to the life of Camp Wickabog for boys. These are some of the activities. There's classes, there was 2 classes of age groups here. and there was 8 in that age group because each cabin held 8 people. And there was 8 there and 7 in that age group. And they're learning how to live in the country. They're learning how swimming and diving, how to ride a horse, live by yourself and without any electricity or anything else in a cabin, do gardening. They also taught riflery and everything else. So it was a very interesting thing. Unfortunately, 1927, we all know what happened 28 and 29. The Depression came, and it no longer could find anybody to come to camp. But he kept the property. When he bought it, he financed it for $5,000 with the bank in Springfield and $1,000 to Tyler at Tyler Road, Tyler's Mill. Tyler took a $1,000 mortgage on it too. And he paid the mortgages up until 1937. It was foreclosed on because he didn't pay the taxes in West Brookfield. And West Brookfield tax collector called the bank in Springfield and said, you know, that property we're going to foreclose on if you don't pay the taxes. Well, the bank paid the taxes and kept the property. Up until 1940, it just got to be more, he couldn't pay the mortgage on it and everything. So it went up for foreclosure auction, and Francis McGreevy bought it. And people remember the camps up there. Into this, they had a main camp that had a little bowling alley in it and everything else for the boys. They spent a lot of money, and it never really paid off. But that's something you don't often hear of, Camp Wickerbog for boys. And but that's good photo evidence of what it was and how much it cost and everything. Early transportation. This is a 1949 photo. Brookfield Wire is now located here. They called it the Brookfield Airport. It says Brookfield on that building. But it was not it was not in Brookfield, it was in West Brookfield. Part of the runway, which comes up this way, would be in Brookfield. But this is an outing they had, a fly-in, and I think I counted there's 18 planes there at the little Brookfield Airport. And they used to sell flying lessons there, gave flying school. Gussie Willett had flying lessons there. This was a fly-in. They sent to all different airports, and the guys would come and eat here, and they liked it because one of these sold fried clams and French fries. And that was a big thing in 1949. They said, let's fly out to Brookfield this morning. You know, and they had stunt flying too. And Donald Richards isn't here, but his father, Gordon Richards, flew Cessnas, which is a tail-dragging airplane, 2 wheels in the front and tail drags. And he flew those a lot, and he was do things that you shouldn't do with a Cessna. But they would put, and I thought it was here. Oh, there, see that little circle? What's that circle for? Well, each guy was given a 5-pound bag of flour. And you go up, and these only had side curtains, no windows or doors. They had doors, but no windows in them, just a plastic curtain. So they give everybody a 5-pound bag of flour, and you can go up and drop it off. And who came the closest or put the 5-pound bag of flour in that circle there, see? That was one of the things they did. And the other thing was to shut off the engine when the minute your wheels hit and see who could coast up to this line here. And, you know, if you shut off your engine too quick, you never got close to the line, or if too late, you're up here. But there were a lot of air shows they did up there, and now it's Brookfield Wire Company. Interesting? Yeah? Good. Okay, we'll go before that, Electric Sesame. This is one of the trolley companies that came through West Brookfield. It came from Ware to Gilbertville and from Ware to West Brookfield. And it's also responsible for the Lake Wickabog Lakeside Park, dance halls and everything. This was a Ware and West Brookfield trolley company, 1906. And leave West Brookfield for Ware. These are the times. Leave Ware for West Brookfield, Gilbertville. And when they were building this, they started with 12-pound rail. Well, a trolley is run with DC current, and your power is up on a tower that runs the engine, but your ground is the track. And 12-pound track it weighs 12 pounds for each foot. And when they tried to come up Rock House Hill, that 12-pound track wasn't providing a good ground, and the engines, they could not climb the hill. So they had to go to 16-pound track. Bigger, wider track gave it better ground, and now they could come up over the hill. So that was one of the mistakes they made. Another mistake was, which he showed, was before they even got going, they built a park. And why did they build a park? Because they were going to get trolley business. Everybody coming from Ware and Palmer and Wilbraham could come up and go to our Lakeside Park in West Brookfield, but they didn't have the track even laid, but they bought the park. Doesn't make sense. And in that brochure, they are advertising the ancient tavern, the West Brookfield House, which was a year-old tavern, established in 1760, maybe 1767, but we're not going to talk about that, right? And this hotel has been thoroughly remodeled, refurnished, latest improvements, up-to-date way. Stop over one car, try our dinners, stay a few days, enjoy the pure air week, and come see the place, the room that Washington died on. George Washington died October 22nd, 1789. Messinger at that time was running the tavern. Stop over at Roach's. Where's Roach's? Well, you know Roach's is the building that Country Bank occupies, right up on the corner of Central and Main Street. That's Country Bank was Roach's. And Roach was one of Lizzie, she owned the building and Roach was related. And he ran this little store with a waiting room there, and you could get a quick lunch and you could buy a cigar or candy and so forth. But he also had an ad on their timetable to stop there at Roach's. Lizzie Joyce owned the building. They come to me, but there's a lot of things up there in the file, and I have to keep going through to get them up. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will, if anyone has any questions, as long as it's not about who built the tavern and who owns the common. Nothing?
The fountain there in the center of town, did they build a reservoir specifically for that?
Yes, the town in 1884, George Rice had bought the equipment, the fountain. Never to be proven, but often said years and years ago, that fountain was shipped from New York, where it was built, to go to the Boston Common. And Boston Common people saw the bare-breasted girls and said, So it stayed in Worcester. And George Rice, who was originally from West Brookfield, said, that'd be a nice thing. So he came out and made the offer to the selectmen. Now, how could maybe he should have done it to the church, right? Because they own the common. He did it to the selectmen, and they approved the fountain. But he says there's one codicil. He says you've got to always supply water to that fountain. And I have that handwritten in his writing too. So the town had a water board they established, and to get water to the fountain, and without anything, they had to have the elevation and enough water to push it down and out the 38 feet high on the common to
Across from the dump.
the thing.
Water had to come from across the dump.
So the water, and this is something very few people know, they dammed up Colonel's Brook. And dare say you can ask 1,000 people in West Brookfield where Colonel's Brook is, and they never heard of it. But it's up behind Freddie Smith's property on the North Brookfield Road, where Talvey lived. There's a reservoir up there. And the town voted money to build a reservoir to supply on private property to supply the fountain with taxpayers' money. So the town okayed it, and A.W. Smith got the contract to build a dam, and that's a whole story in itself. But he built the dam up there, and as soon as he got 2/3 of the way building the dam, George Rice, who was going to give it, started laying pipe, 1 mile of pipe from behind Talvey's house, Freddie Smith's, or now, all the way down across the common to the fountain. And in 1885, that pipe had a valve on it, and it closed. They opened the valve, and they had running water out the fountain in West Brookfield, and no town, house, no home or anything else had running water in West Brookfield, but we had it on our common. And the little fountain that now is in front of the Congregational Church, when they came down the North Brookfield Road, they cut diagonally across the common to the fountain. You know, they didn't go down and all around the street. They cut diagonally across. And that little fountain was then put in the middle of that pipe coming across the common there, that little fountain. And if you ever noticed, that has 2 cups on either side up. Those cups are for horses to drink out of, because, you know, they're up here and you can't reach them, and they just held probably a couple of quarts of water each on each side. But those are for horses. That little fountain there with the was in 1880 in France. It was designed in France and then duplicated and sent over here. And the woman at Smithsonian Institute that studies all fountains said that is the only one little drinking fountain with Cupid playing a lyre on it that she's ever seen in the United States or that she knows of. So she says that is a secret to keep in West Brookfield, because she doesn't believe there's any more. And she supplied me with, she's in charge of fountains for the museum there, and wonderful, wonderful person. And I did a lot of email contact with her, and she said, let me give you my phone number. So she gave me her phone number, and one day I wanted an answer quick, and rather than email, I dialed the phone. And she answered the phone. I said, my God, a place like that, and you're answering your own phone? She said, anybody that works for the Smithsonian that has an office with a phone in it must answer their own damn phone. And she answered it, and she answered the questions and everything. Very, very, very cordial, very nice person. And she did a book that's about that thick on fountains in West Brookfield. And fountains like that. And she found a total of 13 that were in the United States, like ours, Only ours is the only one with only 2 girls in meditation at the bottom. All the others have, there's one in Clinton, Mass, just like ours. It has 4 girls. There's only 2 different models, but there's 1 of each, 2 of each on when they have 4 girls there. And ours is unusual because it only has 2 girls in meditation. What else about? Oh, a lot of the fountains, it's a cast iron base. That first tray weighs 2,300 pounds, a little over a ton. And it's cast iron. And the other one was about 1,400 pounds, the smaller one. And during World War II, a lot of people sent their fountains away for the metal that were in them. So that's another thing about the fountains. You're right. We built a reservoir and the reservoir still stands.
Yeah, it's still there.
And what I'm going to, sometime, I have permission from the guy that owns it now to take anybody up. So someday on a Sunday morning, you'll like to go up and see the reservoir because the dam is still perfectly there. And we can all,
To get to, isn't it a trail off of Birch Hill to get to it?
I'm sorry, off of Route 67, North Brookfield Road,
Oh, is it, get
is how you would get there. Yeah.
How high is the dam wall?
25 feet.
How many?
25 feet from the bottom to the top of the dam.
Would you have to walk up from the Talvey property?
I'm sorry?
Would you have to walk up from the Talvey?
Talvies,
Walk up from there?
yeah. It's not a fur piece. It's from here to the tavern, but it's not, it's, walking through the trail where the tractor drives and everything. But I thought it might be nice, some people would like to see it because it was built in 1884 and it's still standing.
It's made out of granite also, big granite slab.
Yeah, big granite slabs. And the farmer that built it in 3 months' time. Can you imagine? Without bulldozers and anything else. Oxen and stone boats and everything. Built that dam in 3 months. Any other questions? You had a question. You,
No, I was wondering if the boys' camp was anywhere near where the Mass Wildlife owns the property up there.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Mass Wildlife owns this side of it before you get to it. But that was, some of the property was probably bought by Mass Wildlife. That's correct. Okay, nothing else? Thank you.